the spotlights glow, I finally might let the music lift me high.
A boy from Cebu just stepped on the AGT stage, and the moment he sang, jaws dropped. His voice wasn't just good, it was better than Elvis. Judges froze, audience gasped, and the world witnessed a Filipino teen turn a classic into pure magic. The enormous theater of America's Got Talent buzzed with anticipation, lights flashing and cameras whirring, capturing every corner of the stage and audience. The crowd's chatter was a low hum, anticipation growing with every second. Tonight wasn't just any audition. Word had spread online that a young boy from Cebu, Philippines was about to step on the stage, and rumors claimed he sang like a legend. But no one truly knew what to expect. Backstage, the boy stood in silence, his fingers nervously clutching the microphone. He was only 16, his frame small against the intimidating backdrop of massive screens and bright stage lights. His shirt was a simple white button-down, slightly wrinkled, shoes scuffed from years of wear, but there was an unmistakable glow in his eyes, a mix of determination, passion, and a lifetime of dreams waiting to be unleashed. For years, he had practiced in the cramped living room of his home in Cebu. He had listened to every Elvis record he could get his hands on, mimicking the king's movements, his voice echoing through the narrow streets, unnoticed by the world. Until now. He had rehearsed the song thousands of times, imagining himself on this very stage, but nothing could prepare him for the reality of thousands of cameras trained on him and millions watching worldwide. His mentor, a retired local singer who had taught him everything about stage presence and technique, gave him a firm pat on the shoulder. "Remember," he whispered, "you're not just singing for the judges. Sing for yourself, for your family, for Cebu. Let your heart guide your voice." The boy nodded, swallowing hard as he stepped forward toward the backstage curtain. The roar of the crowd was deafening as Terry Cruz's voice boomed across the arena, announcing his name. Hearts pounded in chests as the spotlight shifted to him, isolating him in a cone of white light. The rest of the stage disappeared. The judges, the cameras, even the audience became peripheral. There was only him and the song he had lived with for years. As he walked forward, each step seemed heavier than the last. He could hear whispers from the crowd, some curious, some skeptical. Simon Cowell, ever the critic, leaned forward with his arms folded, eyes narrowing as if to dissect the boy before him. Heidi Klum smiled gently, offering a look of reassurance. Sofia Vergara's eyebrows lifted in intrigue, while Howie Mandel leaned back, a hint of curiosity dancing in his usually guarded expression. The teen took a deep breath. His mind flashed back to mornings in Cebu, where he would wake before sunrise to practice, to afternoons walking through crowded streets with headphones on, perfecting his phrasing. He thought of his parents, working tirelessly to support his dreams, and of his grandfather, who first introduced him to Elvis, spinning vinyl records and telling stories of the king's legendary performances. Those memories fueled him now, giving him courage as the stage seemed to grow even larger around him. He reached the microphone stand, gripping it lightly but confidently. The moment he opened his mouth to speak, a hush fell over the entire theater. "Hello. My name is Miguel," he said softly, his voice trembling just slightly. "I grew up listening to Elvis with my grandfather. Music has always been my escape, my dream. And today, I hope to share it with all of you." His sincerity hung in the air, palpable, drawing nods and quiet murmurs from the judges. The audience shifted in their seats, leaning forward, sensing that this was more than a typical audition. Terry Cruz's booming smile radiated encouragement as he stepped aside to give the boy the center stage. The lights dimmed, leaving a single spotlight that bathed Miguel in a golden glow. Silence enveloped the arena. Even the faintest cough seemed intrusive. The tension was electric, as if the entire world collectively held its breath, waiting for the first note. Miguel closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the vibrations of the stage beneath his feet, imagining his grandfather beside him, nodding in approval. His fingers tapped lightly on the microphone, grounding himself, until finally he tilted his head and exhaled. This was it. The soft strum of a guitar started, reverberating through the theater. A familiar Elvis melody filled the air, gentle at first, building anticipation. Miguel opened his mouth, and the first note escaped, pure, clear, and surprisingly mature for his age. It was as though the voice of a seasoned performer had suddenly emerged from a teenager. The note hung in the air, vibrating through the theater, and the audience fell silent, collectively stunned by the unexpected depth and warmth of the sound. He continued, carefully shaping each phrase, moving subtly to the rhythm, embodying the charisma of Elvis without imitation, a performance that was both respectful of the legend and unmistakably his own. The judges exchanged glances, their faces betraying shock and admiration. Simon's poker face wavered as he leaned forward, squinting in disbelief. Heidi's eyes glimmered with tears. Sophia's hand went to her mouth. Howie's usually impassive expression melted into amazement. Backstage, Miguel's mentor watched with tears in his eyes, knowing that years of effort, sacrifice, and belief in this boy were finally paying off. The audience, once skeptical, now leaned forward, rapt with attention, whispering to one another, "Is he really just 16? He sounds perfect. Better than the original?" Miguel didn't notice. He was lost in the music, in the story of the song, in the connection he felt to the king who had inspired him. Every gesture, every note, was fueled by emotion, precision, and raw talent. This was the moment he had imagined his entire life, and it was better than he had ever dreamed. The camera panned slowly over the audience and judges, capturing the disbelief and awe in every expression. Simon's mouth opened slightly, unable to form words, his hand resting on his chin as though physically trying to process what he was hearing. Heidi clasped her hands together, holding back an emotional sigh. Howie's eyes sparkled with excitement. Sophia's face mirrored the audience's collective wonder. Miguel felt a surge of energy. The stage was no longer intimidating. It was a bridge connecting him to everyone watching, to his family in Cebu, and to the legacy of a man he had admired since childhood. As he prepared for the next verse, he drew in another breath, steady and deliberate. The theater seemed to hold its collective breath with him. He knew the hardest part was yet to come, to continue honoring Elvis while making the song entirely his own. And with that resolve, he let the next note escape. Stronger, deeper, filled with the emotion and power of someone far beyond his years. The performance had begun, and no one in that theater, or watching at home, would ever forget the boy from Cebu who had dared to step onto the stage and sing like a legend. The theater held its breath. The spotlight on Miguel, the 16-year-old from Cebu, glowed like a beacon. Every eye was glued to him, every ear straining for the first note. The gentle strum of the guitar filled the silence, almost tenderly, teasing the audience, hinting at the magic to come. Then Miguel opened his mouth. The first note rang out, smooth, deep, impossibly controlled for someone so young. It seemed to vibrate through the very air of the theater, settling into every seat, wrapping itself around every stunned listener. The audience didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They simply froze, caught in a collective gasp, mouths slightly open, eyes wide, not daring to blink. Heidi Klum's jaw literally dropped. She sat forward, her hands trembling slightly as if to hold herself together. Howie Mandel's usual playful smirk was gone. In its place, a look of pure astonishment, as though he had witnessed a miracle. Sofia Vergara clasped her hands to her chest, whispering under her breath, "Wow, just wow." And Simon Cowell. Simon sat motionless, eyes locked on Miguel, mouth slightly parted, a hand slowly creeping up to cover it. Even he, the notoriously unshakable critic, was at a loss for words. Miguel's voice grew stronger with each phrase. He wasn't just singing the song, he was embodying it. Every inflection, every subtle vibrato, every pause, it was precise, powerful, and perfectly timed. He didn't imitate Elvis. He became the essence of what made Elvis timeless, yet infused it with his own youthful brilliance and emotional depth. The camera cut to the audience. Adults held back tears, clutching their partners' hands. Teenagers whispered to each other, disbelief written across their faces. Some shook their heads, murmuring, "Is this really happening?" Others had tears streaming down their cheeks, unable to contain the overwhelming beauty of what they were hearing. Phones were lifted tentatively, recording, capturing the moment that would soon go viral worldwide. Backstage, Miguel's mentor had tears streaming down his face. Years of late nights, early mornings, countless hours of training in cramped row. Homes in Cebu had led to this moment. He had always believed in Miguel, but even he hadn't expected this level of mastery at such a young age. His hands shook, clasping together as if in silent prayer, hoping the judges and the world could feel the depth of emotion Miguel poured into each note. On stage, Miguel swayed gently, letting the music move him, letting the story of the song take over his body. He raised one hand, the other gripping the microphone, closing his eyes as though connecting with an invisible presence, a nod to the king himself. His voice carried the pain and hope of the lyrics, telling a story far beyond words. The audience felt it, connecting deeply with a young boy from Cebu, thousands of miles away, yet making them feel as if he had sung just for them. The guitar strummed again, softer this time, creating space for Miguel's voice to soar even higher. He hit a series of notes that seemed almost impossible, his control and range astonishing. Simon's hand dropped slowly from his face, eyes narrowing as he leaned forward in disbelief. Howie's usual energetic energy gave way to silent awe, his eyebrows raised so high they nearly disappeared into his hairline. Heidi's breathing had slowed as she tried to process what she was witnessing, while Sophia's eyes glistened, fixed on Miguel as though hypnotized. Miguel transitioned seamlessly into the chorus, each note sharper, more confident, yet still infused with emotion. The audience began to stir, unable to resist the power of the performance. Some stood, hesitant, unsure if they should applaud mid-song, but their feet tapped involuntarily. Their hands twitched, ready to clap. Whispers and murmurs of "he's incredible and better than Elvis" floated through the crowd. Miguel felt the energy. He fed off it, his voice gaining intensity, his phrasing sharper, more dynamic. Every inflection, every pause, very swell in tone, told a story. He was no longer just singing, he was performing, connecting, enchanting. The song, a classic from a legendary icon, had been reimagined, reborn through the voice of a boy who carried decades of musical heritage in his soul. The judges, still seated, were paralyzed by disbelief. Simon Cowell, known for his critical eye and harsh judgments, now sat upright, leaning close to the edge of his chair. His fingers tapped nervously on the armrest, a rare display of vulnerability. He had heard countless performances, seen countless Elvis impersonators and talented singers, but nothing like this. Nothing that could evoke such pure astonishment and respect. Heidi Klum's hands were pressed, together, her face glowing with admiration. Howie's usual jokes were gone. He was frozen, eyes glinting with excitement and awe. Sofia Vergara, elegant and composed, now openly cried, moved beyond words. This was more than a performance. It was a revelation. Miguel hit the final note of the verse with precision and emotion that made the room feel like it had collectively inhaled. A ripple ran through the audience. The judges exchanged stunned glances. Simon's mouth finally moved, struggling to form words, his voice low but urgent. I don't even know what to say." The young boy's confidence swelled as he prepared for the next section of the song. He moved across the stage, subtle hip sways paying homage to Elvis, yet uniquely his own. The lighting shifted, dramatic reds and golds bathing him as he soared into the chorus. Each note carried weight, emotion, and maturity far beyond his years. The audience began to clap along softly, drawn into the rhythm, unable to resist the pull of his voice. Terry Crews, standing to the side, could barely contain his excitement, clapping and shouting encouragement. Cameras captured every moment, every reaction, a Yoon. G-Boy from Cebu transforming the stage into a spectacle no one would forget. The crowd rose slowly to their feet, unsure at first, but the pull of the performance was undeniable. They had to honor the talent they were witnessing. Miguel's mentor whispered softly from backstage, tears streaming down his cheeks. "That's it. You're doing it. You're owning it." Miguel's eyes flicked to the side, catching the glance, a fleeting smile passing over his lips before he focused entirely on the song again. With every line, his voice grew in confidence, resonating across the theater, the notes perfectly balanced between technical mastery and raw emotion. It was impossible to ignore the sheer talent emanating from this young boy. The song's narrative came alive, and for the audience, it felt personal, like Miguel was telling their story through the lens of his own life. As the verse ended, the room was completely still. Everyone in the theater, judges, audience, crew, even cameras, held their collective breath, waiting for the next moment. The performance wasn't just impressive, it was historic. Miguel had achieved something that words could barely describe. He had made the impossible feel effortless. The boy from Cebu, barely 16, had done what few ever could. He commanded the stage, captivated a global audience, and left the legendary judges of AGT speechless. This was only the beginning, but the world already knew that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The final chorus approached, and the atmosphere in the AGT theater had shifted completely. What had started as curiosity and skepticism had transformed into pure awe. Miguel, the 16-year-old boy from Cebu, stood in the spotlight, his small frame radiating an energy that seemed far larger than the stage itself. Every eye in the audience, every camera lens, every judge's gaze was locked on him, waiting or the moment he would unleash the full force of his talent. Miguel took a deep breath, feeling the vibrations of the stage beneath his feet. His heart pounded in perfect rhythm with the swelling music, and in that instant, all nervousness melted away. There was only the song, the story, and the connection he felt to his audience. This was the culmination of years of dedication, of mornings spent practicing before sunrise in a small Cebu home, afternoons lost in the melodies of Elvis, and nights imagining himself on a stage exactly like this. As the first notes of the chorus filled the theater, Miguel's voice soared higher, richer, more powerful than anyone could have imagined. Each note was perfectly controlled, yet brimming with raw emotion. Joy, pain, hope, and the undeniable passion of a young boy who had given everything to reach this moment. The audience leaned forward instinctively, as though drawn by some magnetic force. Even the judges, still processing the earlier verses, were now completely captivated. Simon Cowell, who had been silent and almost immobile through most of the performance, finally reacted. His usually sharp and critical eyes were wide with disbelief. He leaned forward on the edge of his chair, mouth slightly agape, shaking his head as if to physically deny what he was hearing. This isn't possible," he muttered under his breath, almost to himself. But he couldn't look away. He was witnessing a performance that defied logic and surpassed every expectation he had ever held. Heidi Klum had risen to her feet, clapping fervently, tears glistening in her eyes. Howie Mandel, who normally maintained a calm, calculated exterior, was on his feet too, jaw dropped, clapping and shouting in excitement. Sofia Vergara, elegant and poised, was openly crying, her hands over her mouth in sheer amazement. The audience, initially hesitant, had now PT'd into a thunderous standing ovation, chanting Miguel's name. Every person in that theater was caught in the magic of the moment, unable to resist acknowledging the young boy's extraordinary gift. Miguel moved across the stage with confidence, swaying slightly in rhythm with the music. His gestures were subtle, yet they perfectly complemented his performance. He wasn't mimicking Elvis. He was channeling the essence of a legend while asserting his own unique identity. Each note was deliberate, each phrase crafted with precision, yet infused with the emotion of someone who had lived and breathed the song his entire life. The camera captured close-ups of his face, revealing the intensity in his eyes, the determination etched into his features. His lips curved slightly as he poured his soul into every word, and for the audience, it felt as though he was speaking directly to each of them. Every heart in the theater seemed to beat in sync with his performance. The final line approached, the climactic note that would seal the performance. Miguel inhaled deeply, grounding himself in the energy of the crowd, the judges, and the moment itself. Then he let it out. The note hit with astonishing clarity and power, resonating through the theater and shaking the very air. It was a perfect combination of strength, emotion, and technical brilliance. The audience gasped audibly, some clapping mid-note, unable to contain their excitement. The judges' reactions were instantaneous. Simon's eyes widened even further, his jaw slack, while Heidi and Howie were practically vibrating with exhilaration. Sophia's hands flew to her cheeks as tears streamed down her face. For a brief heartbeat, the theater was completely silent, as if everyone was holding their breath to let the final vibrations settle. Then, as the note faded, the eruption came. The audience screamed, cheered, and clapped. Rising to their feet en masse. Cameras flashed. Some people wept openly, others simply shook their heads in disbelief. Miguel's name echoed throughout the theater, a chorus of voices recognizing the sheer brilliance they had just witnessed. Terry Crews, unable to contain his excitement, bounded onto the stage, enveloping Miguel in a proud, triumphant hug. The young boy's eyes filled with tears as he embraced the man who had welcomed him so warmly to the stage. He looked out at the audience, soaking in the applause, feeling the collective admiration and the recognition of all the hard work that had led him to this moment. The judges, still standing, turned their attention fully to Miguel. Simon Cowell, rarely prone to overt emotion, stepped forward, pointing directly at the boy. "I've seen a lot of talent in my life," he said, his voice steady but filled with awe, "but what you just did is beyond anything I've ever witnessed. You didn't just sing, you brought a legend back to life. You made it your own. That was incredible." Heidi Klum nodded, still clapping enthusiastically. "Your heart, your soul, your voice, it's magic. Pure magic. I don't even know what else to say." Howie Mandel, who had a constant energy about him, shouted, "I'm officially speechless. I don't know if I've ever heard anything like this. That was legendary." Sofia Vergara, wiping her tears, added, "You touched everyone in this room. Your voice, it's unforgettable. You're going to go far, mi amor." Miguel's legs trembled slightly as he held the microphone, overwhelmed by the love, admiration, and shock emanating from everyone around him. He had given everything, every note, every emotion, every ounce of himself, and the world had responded in kind. The applause was deafening, yet amidst it all, there was a profound silence in his mind, a quiet recognition. He had done it. He had honored his idol, shared his gift, and captivated the world. The camera panned across the audience once more, capturing faces glowing with amazement and joy. Tears streamed freely, hands clapped, whistles blew, and voices cheered. Social media feeds were already lighting up with the performance, the hashtags trending worldwide within seconds. The world had witnessed a moment of pure brilliance, a performance that would be remembered for generations. Miguel's mentor rushed onto the stage, enveloping him in an emotional embrace. "You did it, Miguel! You did it! Everyone saw it! Everyone felt it! I'm so proud of you!" Terry Crews joined in, lifting Miguel into the air with a triumphant laugh. Cameras captured the boy smiling through tears, radiating a joy so pure it touched everyone watching. The judges, still clapping, exchanged glances that said it all. This was a moment they would never forget. Miguel bowed deeply, overwhelmed, yet confident in the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The applause continued, a wave of love and admiration washing over him. In that instant, the boy from Cebu became more than just a contestant. He became a phenomenon, a symbol of talent, perseverance, and the transformative power of music. As the standing ovation continued, Miguel whispered softly, almost to himself, "This is for Cebu, for my family, and for every dream I've ever had." His voice trembled with emotion, yet carried a strength that mirrored his performance. And in that moment, the world knew a star had been born. The stage lights dimmed slightly, but the energy in the theater remained electric. Judges continued to clap, audience members remained on their feet, and Miguel, still glowing from the experience, stood at the center, realizing that he had just made history. This was more than a performance. This was a legacy in the making.